This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Well, the wait is over. Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez both returning on the same night for Liverpool ahead of the start of the new season. Welcome along as we react to the Reds' latest pre-season outing with myself, Guy Clarke, and here with me we have our Liverpool correspondent, Paul Gorst. Liverpool 3, Hertha Berlin for Mane, Minamino and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, all on the score sheet out in Austria. Of course, it was a defeat in the end for Liverpool, but I think for many people, the big takeaway tonight is Van Dijk and Gomez both out on the pitch and both back for the Reds.
Yeah, no question. That's the big takeaway. It's probably the only takeaway, really, isn't it, from a pre-season game that was quite entertaining as far as pre-season games go. Normally, they're a bit of a slog and they never get any rhythm going because of the changes that happen left, right and centre. And this one was a little bit different, wasn't it? There were plenty of changes, of course, but both teams going for it. And both teams looking like they could have scored and so proved with seven on the score sheet in total. But yeah, Van Dijk and Gomez, of course, that's the big story from tonight, isn't it? They got a little over 20 minutes. Every kind of pass and touch was cheered massively out there, wasn't it, for the 11,000 fans who were in attendance. Large majority of which were Austrian fans, of course. Even some you never walk alone before the game. Everywhere Liverpool go, they've got a massive following, haven't they? So, some lucky Austrian supporters got to watch Van Dijk and Gomez in action tonight. We're going to see the banter brigade on Twitter try and wind up Liverpool fans over the next coming days because of the Jovetic goal, the second one, but Van Dijk does the trademark, shows him the space and says, go on, run into it. I'm quicker than you, I'm stronger than you. And then as he goes to close the space, he kind of just gets his legs tangled a little bit, and Jovetic, clearly an experienced striker, manages to wriggle free and get the shot off and get his second goal. And I don't think we need to read anything into that. You know, Van Dijk is coming off 285 days out injured. What's that, 9 months? Yeah, good for him to get 15, 20 minutes in the tank. He'll obviously build on that next week in one of the two games against Bologna. And then take it from there with the games at Anfield. I think he'll only play in one of those. And then see where we are when the season starts. Still expected to be Konate and Matip starting that one. But yeah, massive night. Great to see him back. And just a little something extra to look forward to next season or this season.
Yeah, a few of the takeaways I had was I think it was that first long-range pass he had that went straight to Andy Robertson. Yeah. That radar's not been affected at all. And I think as you say, certainly that last goal and the slip, and it did look a bit clumsy. There's no sort of point in getting away from it. But again, I suppose that highlights the point of how good it is for Virgil van Dijk. And they made the point on the commentary on LFC TV to have him back during pre-season and that he can sort of get up to speed during this time in sort of non-competitive action, because you wouldn't want him to be coming straight back into sort of a key game in the Premier League in, say, November and slip and make an error like that, and it cost Liverpool points in a Premier League game.
Yeah, 100%. I thought, as you say, there's passes, and there was one particular, wasn't there, that trademark rake and pass from, actually it was from right to left this time rather than from left to right. But I think he knocked it to Elliott. It was wide, and that drew probably the biggest applause of the night, and it was just great to see, wasn't it? Textbook Van Dijk and what Liverpool fans have missed for so long. Yeah, it was a little bit of a slight mishap for the goal. It did look a bit clumsy, and had Van Dijk had 6 weeks of match action in his legs, that wouldn't have happened. I still would have expected him to kind of snuff out that threat, even though Jovetic is obviously still a very good striker. He's been around for a while now, hasn't he? But still knows where the back of the net is. But yeah, I thought it was good to see Gomez back as well. Obviously, he's been out a little bit less than Van Dijk. I think there was about 3 or 4 weeks in between their respective injuries. I must admit I was surprised to see Gomez. I thought he might have been a little bit further behind in his recovery just because of the when the injury was, as I say, November rather than the October. I don't think they were the same type of injuries, but they weren't necessarily too different, really, both serious knee injuries. So yeah, great to see both of them back, and Liverpool now have 5 fit centre halves capable of playing for Liverpool. So I think Jurgen Klopp will be delighted, really. He didn't really say too much post-match. He was kind of caught up in the kind of emotion of it all, that the fans were still there cheering on everything. And when he had his interview, he was just kind of a bit manic and just didn't really make too much in terms of points and key takeaways. It was all just a bit running through the goals that he conceded, the goals that they scored, and I think they might settle down on a training tomorrow or the recovery sessions tomorrow and talk through the goals that they conceded in a little bit more detail and try and shut up shop a bit better next time. And they still look sharp going forward. So all in all, it was probably a really good workout.
Yeah, and I suppose we're now probably at that stage, aren't we? I was going to ask you sort of where Liverpool are at, and probably best kind of be said on Van Dijk as well. That I think he may well have played a bit of a hand. It won't go down as an assist, but in the third goal that was palmed out and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain rifled in. But sort of broad stroke with Liverpool's pre-season now. I suppose it is probably the back end of this week leading into next week ahead of Bologna and the 2 Anfield games where maybe we'll sort of start to see Liverpool now take it up a notch. Everyone sort of seems to have had an hour or so under their belts, apart from those obviously coming back into the group. And now sort of Jurgen Klopp maybe talking about those goals, and a few of them were certainly avoidable for Liverpool, and maybe off to Evian, and that being a time where Liverpool can turn the screw and really properly sort of fine-tune their preparations.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that defensively. Teams always concede sloppy goals here and there in pre-season, and of course there will be work to be done. But I think once the big day comes against Norwich, I think they will be sufficiently ready. So I'm not too concerned about that. Klopp was disappointed to concede 4. I think he said that in his post-match transcript. But on the flip side, they still look quite sharp going forward. I thought Mo Salah had a good game. Naby Keita continues to just breeze through these games, looking every inch a superstar. And I think the big point for him now is to kind of take that into competitive action and stay fit. The ability is not in question. As him and Joel Matip are kind of in the same boat in terms of both superb elite level players, but are never fit. So if they can prove the fitness, then the quality is never in doubt, is it? So hopefully Keita can build on that. Oxlade-Chamberlain, again, bit hit and miss as a number 9, but took his goal well. Really good volley, wasn't it? Keeper kind of punched it out into his area and he struck it well. And he's always been able to do that, to be fair, Oxlade-Chamberlain, whether he's playing right wing back, centre mid or up front. He's always got a really good strike on him, and he'll be pleased to get his goal, but I'm not too convinced with him as a centre forward at the moment. Or Minamino, if I'm honest. He took his goal well as well, actually, but just seems to drift in and out of games and very much on the periphery, and I think there's work to be done for him as well. So I think that Liverpool are in probably a decent space at the moment, but there is still work to be done. And to be fair, they've got 2-hour games against Bologna next week, and then the 2 games against Anfield before Norwich. So they're probably halfway through, aren't they? And they're about where they should be at this point.
Yeah, like I said, it feels as though maybe in the next week or so things might sort of step up a little bit. And obviously there is a lot of the youngsters still with the squad at the moment as well. But wanted to talk about Naby Keita because he just teases us in, doesn't he? Each pre-season he reels everyone in, and you feel as though, this will be the season. He'll knuckle down. He'll prove why the club made him the 3rd most expensive transfer of all time for Liverpool. And then things don't quite go right. But again, watching his performance today, you can completely see and understand why that £52 million price tag was put on him by RB Leipzig, because certainly the second goal as well that Liverpool scored, it was finished by Minamino. Fantastic back heel from Mohamed Salah that spun into Minamino's path, but it was all started by that high pressing from Naby Keita after the initial attack looked as though it kind of broken down. Yeah,
exactly, wasn't it? He was pushing up very high, and Liverpool got the first goal from a similar situation, really, in terms of pressing high. Goalkeeper, his throw out was intercepted by Tsimikas. So Klopp will be pleased with that in particular, because we know how much stock he puts in pressing high up the pitch. And if Keita adds that to his game with the natural ability and hopefully a prolonged spell of fitness, then we could be looking at a new player at Liverpool. Not a new signing, hesitant to use that phrase because he's been here 4 years now. And should be doing more for a £52-3 million midfielder for me, but he's got the ability to do it, which is why he's still at the club. Because I think if he didn't have that natural ability, I think Klopp would have washed his hands of him long ago, if we're being perfectly honest. So he keeps teasing the supporters, showing what he can do. And now it's just a case of him dominating games more than decorating them. And it's nice to be able to do it in a pre-season friendly against Hertha Berlin for an hour. But I want to see him doing it against Norwich, Chelsea, Burnley, after the international break, stay fit, carry that into the autumn, carry that into the winter, into the new year. That's basically the challenge for him now, and it's a big one because he hasn't proven that he can do it yet, but we shall see in the coming months.
It's a big hill to climb, isn't it? Because it's not even just a case of the whole staying fit and starting, say, more than 3 games in a row. It's actually start those, but dominate those midfields in each of those as well. That's the expectation, and it's not wrong for Liverpool fans maybe to expect that of that kind of player. But tonight, you sort of referenced it beforehand with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Minamino. But did we kind of see tonight as well, maybe in terms of fine-tuning and taking that next step? Actually, the void's still there in this Liverpool squad, the likes of Jordan Henderson and Fabinho not around, James Milner still playing that defensive midfield screening role, and then later Leighton Clarkson, and of course Roberto Firmino, exactly what he brings to linking the attack. Yeah,
I mean, you can't really replicate what Firmino does. I mean, question marks over Firmino's form, and there probably have been for a while, really, but, when he's at his best, it's one of the first names on the team sheet, isn't he? So he's probably Liverpool's most unique player in terms of how he plays that number 9 role. So asking Oxlade-Chamberlain as a central midfielder to be able to pick that up in a pre-season schedule is probably massively unfair, actually. And I was a bit critical of his performance against Mainz, and I have been in the analysis for this. But now that we're talking about it, perhaps I've been a bit harsh. But I think Klopp sees what he's got in his locker as someone who can do a job there. He's got a great strike on him, as we mentioned, and he's got a good engine. He's got great pace. He's obviously very comfortable in possession. So he's got a lot of qualities that lends itself towards being a decent striker. And we'll see in the coming months if he can adapt to it. He was asked about it again after the game by LFC TV, and he's just said that he's still getting used to it, I think. He admitted a week or 2 ago that he still sees himself as a central midfielder, and I think I do, but the competition for places is a lot more pronounced in Liverpool's midfield than it is up front, isn't it? Certainly down the middle. So, he's a versatile player, and Klopp loves those. So there will be space for him at some point this season. And let's not forget, he didn't have a pre-season last year, did he? I think he come back in the November time and never really built up a head of steam, and couldn't really, because Liverpool were basically just playing who they could get on the pitch at times last season. So, difficult for him at the moment trying to replicate that number 9, but I still think he's got something in the tank, and he might have a decent season.
Yeah, interesting to see how it does play out. Well, that's us looking back on the friendly defeat in the end, as it were, against Hertha Berlin, but the result not the important factor for Liverpool on this evening. It's all about the return of Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez. That it, though, from our Liverpool correspondent, Paul Gorst. Do make sure to head across to the Liverpool Echo and check out all of the analysis and in-depth look backs on the result and the performance for Liverpool. But from myself, Guy Clarke, and Paul Gorst, thanks for joining us. It's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.